For decades, this shadow war has been simmering between Iran and its adversaries, right? Fought with proxies, covert ops, all behind the scenes. Well, in early 2026, that all changed. It just exploded right into open, direct warfare. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how this conflict, which has been bubbling under the surface for so long, finally boiled over. And believe me, it has plunged the world into a whole new era of uncertainty. So let's get right into it.
Okay, so it all comes down to this one date, February 28th, 2026. This was it. This was the day that everything, and I mean everything, changed.
And here are the words from President Donald Trump that officially launched what they called Operation Epic Fury. That statement served as the green light, the justification for this massive, coordinated U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. And this wasn't just any attack. It killed the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei, and just like that, the Middle East was thrown into a full-blown regional war.
So that really brings us to the big question here. I mean, how on earth did we get to this point? This didn't just happen overnight. This was a war that was decades in the making. So let's figure out how we went from a simmering Cold War to an all-out hot one.
Okay, so the first few hours, just absolute chaos. The US and Israel went straight for the head with a massive decapitation strike. They didn't just hit nuclear sites, they took out the very top of Iran's leadership, killing Supreme Leader Khamenei and his top generals. And Iran's response? It was immediate and it was furious. They launched a huge wave of missile strikes across the entire Middle East. We're talking targets in Israel, yes, but also American allies and bases all over the Gulf. And just like that, the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point for so much of the world's oil, it became an active war zone.
Now, to really get a handle on this, we've got to go back, way back. And here's the crazy part, the real irony of this whole thing. These two mortal enemies, Iran and Israel, they were once partners. Yeah, you heard that right. This is the 47-year story of how they went from allies to enemies.
I mean, look at this contrast. It's just night and day. Before 1979, when the Shah was in power, Iran and Israel were practically allies. They were working together against common Arab rivals, sharing intelligence. Washington even saw them both as pillars of stability in the region. Then, boom, the Islamic Revolution happens, and almost overnight, the new leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, starts calling the U.S. the Great Satan and Israel the Little Satan. The U.S. hostage crisis pretty much sealed the deal, and that hostility has been baked in ever since.
For a little while there, it looked like diplomacy might actually work. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, it was a huge deal. The idea was simple. Iran limits its nuclear program, and in return, the world lifts crippling economic sanctions. But then, in 2018, the U.S. just walked away. The Trump administration, and Israel too, felt the deal was flawed. They said it didn't do anything about Iran's ballistic missiles or its support for proxy groups. So, with the economic benefits gone, Iran just cranked its nuclear program back up, enriching uranium to levels that were dangerously close to what you need for a bomb. And just like that, the crisis was back on.
All right, so that brings us pretty much to the recent past. The collapse of that nuclear deal, that really set the stage. But it was a whole series of rapid-fire events that really tipped the entire region over the edge. Let's look at the timeline, because it really shows how quickly things spiraled. You can just see the dominoes falling here, one after another. The October 7th Hamas attack in 2023, that was the spark. That directly led to something we'd never seen before. Iran and Israel firing missiles directly at each other in April 2024. I mean, all the old rules of the shadow war, they were just thrown out the window. After that, we saw high-profile assassinations of key proxy leaders. And then, in June 2025, this 12-day war where the US and Israel hit Iran's nuclear program hard. Every single one of these steps was a major escalation, leading right up to that final explosion in February 2026. Okay, so we've got the what and the when down. But now we get to the most important part, the why. If you really want to understand this conflict, you absolutely have to get inside the heads of the three main players: Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington. And this is where you can really see the problem, right? The fundamental disconnect. Just look at their core interests. For Iran, the #1 goal is regime survival. That's it. For Israel, it's national survival. And for the US, it's trying to stop Iran from getting a nuke without starting a massive war that craters the global economy. You've got three totally different goals, three totally different fears, and they're all smashing into each other.
So, let's start with Iran. Their entire strategy is something called forward defense, and it's pretty clever in a way. The idea is to use their network of proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, to fight their battles for them. It keeps the conflict far away from their own borders. And that nuclear program? That's their ultimate insurance policy, the thing they believe will stop anyone from invading and trying to topple the government. But, and this is so important, all of this is happening while the regime is dealing with huge protests at home because the economy is in shambles.
Okay, now let's flip over to Israel. Their strategy is guided by something called the Begin Doctrine, and it's simple. They will not allow any hostile country in the region to get nuclear weapons, period. They believe they have to strike first to prevent it. They've done it before, against Iraq and Syria. So when you have a country like Iran, whose leaders have literally called for Israel's destruction trying to get a bomb, well, for Israel, that's not just a strategic headache. It is a true, honest-to-God existential threat.
And that leaves the United States, which is always trying to do this impossible balancing act. The core goals never really change: protect allies like Israel and the Gulf states, and make sure oil keeps flowing freely through the Strait of Hormuz. But how they try to do that has swung back and forth like a pendulum, from diplomacy one minute to maximum pressure the next. These strikes in 2026, though, that was a choice, a definitive shift towards military action, with what looks like the very clear, if unspoken, goal of regime change.
Which brings us to the biggest question of all. The supreme leader is dead, the whole region is on fire. So what happens now? Well, the report we're looking at lays out 3 potential futures.
Okay, scenario 1. This is the optimistic, but also super dangerous one. The Iranian regime just collapses. Now that could be great, right? A new, freer Iran, but it could also mean total chaos, civil war, and worst of all, a desperate scramble for loose nuclear material. Not good. Then there's scenario 2, which is probably the most likely, at least for now. A long, brutal, grinding war with no clear end in sight. Just costly and bloody for everyone. And finally, scenario 3, the long shot. Some kind of negotiated settlement. Maybe a new leader in Tehran decides this isn't worth it and looks for a diplomatic off-ramp.
And if you're sitting there wondering, okay, but why does this matter to me? Here's why. This one number says it all. 20%. That's how much of the entire world's daily oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and that strait is now a live fire war zone. So yeah, this isn't just some distant regional conflict. It's a direct threat to the entire global economy.
So that's where we're left, with this huge, unsettling question. With the old rules completely shattered, are we watching the beginning of a total regional collapse? Or is this the violent birth of some new, incredibly uncertain reality? We don't know the answer yet, but one thing is for sure. What happened on February 28, 2026, well, the consequences of that day are going to be shaping our world for years, maybe even decades to come.